I am Peter Cowan, the Bee Whisperer. If you look at the trees, you can tell it's October. But boy, if you look at the temperature and the weather forecast, you'd hardly believe it's October in Maine. Looking at the weather forecast, the next 10 days, virtually every day is going to be above 60 degrees. I think one day is at 59, and all the others are between 62 and 67 degrees. Unbelievably warm for this time of year. And that's going to mean some actions that we can take or will have to take this fall with our bees. Let me talk to you about it now. So with these higher temperatures, there's three different things we're going to think about in particular. One, there's an opportunity now to feed here in Maine much later than we'd normally get that opportunity to feed. So any of our hives that are feeling lightweight in any way, rather than putting on our winter patties and sugar cakes and sugar boards right now, I'd take the opportunity to feed a bit more 2-to-1 sugar syrup, because the bees will be able to collect it and process it for what looks like at least the next 10 days or so. The nighttime temperatures on a lot of these days are going to be in the 50s. So very good opportunity for bees to prepare for the winter. So take the opportunity to do a bit more feeding. And if your hives are lightweight, you can really get some extra food in now. Don't waste the opportunity. The other thing that this sort of weather brings, though, is the opportunity for bees who are desperate for food to start robbing from each other. So robbing can and will be an issue over the next few weeks, or at least the next couple of weeks. So make sure your entrances, if they aren't already, are reduced down to minimize robbing. Any cracks and bad seals on your supers want to be closed up. If your hives have had any robbing so far, there's going to be more of it over the next couple of weeks, because there's not much out there in terms of flowers, but they're going to be stealing from each other where they can. The hives that are most vulnerable are, of course, those that are dying from mite overload. And your bees might be nice and free of mites and nice and healthy, but they're still looking for food wherever they can find it. And if they can find a hive that's dying from mite overload, they're going to start robbing from it. Even if it's 1 mile or 2 miles away, they're going to be robbing from those hives. And that means they'll be bringing mites back into their own hive. So I would strongly recommend that you go ahead with a oxalic acid treatment, whether you use oxalic acid vaporization or the oxalic acid drizzle method to treat your bees prior to them being sealed up for the winter. So in other words, if this warm weather continues for another 2 weeks or so, when the temperatures start cooling down, get an oxalic acid treatment done in there. So when I like to get my last treatment in as the bees stop flying for the fall. And it looks like this might go on for some time, so I might do 2 oxalic acid treatments during this time. I'm planning to do some this week, but by looking at the weather forecast, I would need to do one again in 2 weeks, 3 weeks or so, because hives robbing from each other will bring mites into your good, strong hives, and your hives that are nice and clean. And whilst they won't be affected, there's no brood for those mites to reproduce in. If you go into the winter with a fair few mites in your hive, your bees will be sickened and weakened in the process of being parasitized. That's the adult bees. And as soon as there's new brood being reared, might be January or February, they're going to get infested heavily with mites at that stage, because those mites will pile into that first brood, those brood young bees that you want to take over in the spring. So, opportunity to feed, watch out for robbing, and try and get another mite treatment in. There's no hurry to insulate and that sort of thing. Those are your 3 priorities for now. I'm Peter Cowan, the Bee Whisperer. See you next time.